Oh, I think you'll see a lot of energy from the president. Again, I'll remind you, John, last year, in real time, he schooled the Republicans who were talking about Medicare and Social Security and made sure they committed to taking that off the table. That's the kind of energy you saw last year. That's the kind of energy I see every day when I'm working with the president. And that's what you'll see tonight.
Let's bring in two men who have more energy on their worst days than Biden does on his best. Shoot, they got more energy while they're asleep. Outkick founder Clay Travis and SiriusXM Patriot host and Fox News contributor David Webb. Great to see both of you. Clay, to start with you, energy, energetic. This is the word of the day. Is Biden going to be able to stand the whole time is really what the American people want to see.
Guys, think about where we are as a State of the Union analysis, where if Joe Biden doesn't trip and fall walking down the aisle, shaking hands with everybody around him, and if he doesn't completely collapse while he's reading off of his teleprompter, Democrats like Joe Scarborough are going to come out and tell us that it's the greatest State of the Union address in the history of mankind. Only if he doesn't have a catastrophe. That's how low the bar has been set. I think unless he collapses and falls like he did at Air Force, we're not going to have much of a lingering aspect of this performance for very far into the future. I think this lasts a couple of days. Again, it has catastrophic potential, not a lot of payoff, I don't believe.
I think that's a good point. I don't think there's a big upside for this with Joe Biden, just because I don't think he can deliver it with a lot of confidence and gusto because he struggles to not mumble. But David Webb, we do have some of the excerpts from tonight's speech, and one of them starts with, "My lifetime has taught me to embrace freedom and democracy." And I look at that, and we're talking about Joe Biden gaslighting and lying to the American people. That is a lie. He's prosecuting his opponent. He forced Americans to take a vaccine that didn't work. He's trying to silence Americans who disagree with him on social media, taking away their First Amendment rights. Do you think the American people are going to buy these lies that he's going to spin tonight?
Well, look, sadly, some people will. And just like if you have to tell people how much energy you have, you really don't have that much energy. You know, Clay got it right. And this is where Joe Biden is. He has to gaslight us and hope that the people that will buy into the narrative that they've been selling them, the people that are under the thumb of government by benefits or the things that government's given them or the students he's trying to buy off with, you know, our tax dollars for votes, that they'll stay in his camp. But people are living their reality. How many times have we talked about real core inflation annualized at 4.8%? Americans are now spending 18 to 20% more per year. Average middle income family that's watching tonight, 11,400 more than they did in 2021. They'll talk about, by the way, Biden will say, look, real wages are up. The counter to that, however, is the reality that when hours are down, your actual loss is 4.4% overall. This is what we're getting. And what we have to do in America is just counter Joe Biden with the truth that we as citizens live every day. Immigration, economic security, and more. And by the way, for all you Neanderthals that are watching tonight, in case you didn't remember, he's not just talking about Texans. He's talking about anyone that doesn't agree with him, including, hey, maybe black men like myself who don't vote for him, who are not black enough. This is a demagogue who's been in office for decades, who simply wants to stay there one more term so he can carry out his wishes to have his picture in the White House. He was never capable, never able, should not have ever had the job, and we have a chance to correct course in America. Don't buy the hype or the lies tonight.
Not only has Biden's team been saying he has energy, and you mentioned the Joe Scarborough, we showed the Joe Scarborough quote, Biden's best version intellectually and analytically. He's neither intellectual nor analytical. He never has been. But there's a column in the New York Times that says, let Dark Brandon off the chain for the night. It's worth the risk. But I also want to get to this video that the president's cronies, Clay, put out. We mean cabinet. They're setting out across the country trying to pitch themselves as the administration for every American. But especially in Biden, they showed off this Hollywood array of people, these actors who played presidents. Watch this.
I do feel I should just point out one thing it always bears remembering: there's no crying in politics.
Well, what I hope is my politics doesn't make anybody else cry.
Those Fugazi presidents look a hell of a lot better than that fossilized one. Clay.
Well, Dagan, what I would point out is I think it's interesting the president has time to interact with all the Hollywood celebrities instead of actually calling the family of Laken Riley and also using her name anywhere. Boy, I'd like to see him care as much about the border as he does about some of these Hollywood cronies that have played the president before. I also think all of them could do a much better job at tonight's State of the Union than he can. Because remember, this is theatrics. He's putting on makeup and he's reading off a teleprompter. There isn't a great deal of spur-of-the-moment analysis going on here. The question is just who's better at reading glass or remembering lines. I'm very confident all those fake presidents are better than our current president at doing his job.
But I do think it seems like he's out of touch. When you put on the fake presidents, the Hollywood elites in a video, you respond to the Cookie Monster. We covered that story a couple days ago. It shows that you don't get where the average American is, and it's not funny. It's not Hollywood. There's real pain, David Webb. Real quick, we have about a minute.
Well, look, Joe Biden has to bring in the fakery because he's been selling this to the American people. And it's actually an insult to the American people that somehow we're going to choose Joe Biden from central casting point of view like he wants us to think. Morgan Freeman, come on, what's the play there? What's the play with any of these actors? It's to tell the people that somehow you're supposed to buy central casting and not the reality that you're living with. Again, gaslight the American people, try to tell them that the truth that they live is not what it is, and watch me on Hollywood because this pre-written script is all you should believe.
Gentlemen, great to see both of you, always. We appreciate it. Clay Travis, David Webb, thank you so much.